well, all social media is really, you know, it's driving so much information and
Currently, we're talking about
disinformation.
organizing a huge amount of information, which is deluging us. And it's
Mhm.
not about organizing that information. We actually need to go a little bit deeper in the things that we want to go deeper into. And because we're being deluged with a lot of information, we don't go behind the headlines.
Hmm.
I call this the headline effect or the headline society, because people don't go behind the headlines. They don't go into the detail of some of the issues that are being discussed. They jump from headline to headline without going and critically
It's going to
analyzing
get
the.
better as people begin to stay away from social media more,
Yeah,
right?
I think it's
And
a
only use
trend.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
and only use it to communicate, you know, the stuff that they want to, and with the
Well,
people
it's
that they
not only
want to.
about the balance, it's about the appropriate regulation. So I
Mm,
when we talk about regulation, we see it as either all good or all bad.
mm,
Ultimately, both good and bad, depending on the type of regulation. Our bodies, I always revert to biology and to medicine because that's where I've learned most of what I am. But uh, in biology and in medicine, our bodies exist because they're regulated by natural laws and interactions internally. Those interactions are leading to improved outcomes. That's good regulation. So regulation, the fact that something is regulated is not necessarily bad, as long as the regulation leads to a beneficial, positive outcome. So it's not about more regulation is bad. It's not. It needs to be appropriate. So regulation
mm-hmm.
needs to be appropriate to the type of activity we are engaged in. For example, regulating the amount of information could be a bad thing if it's done inappropriately, but it could be a great thing if done appropriately, because then if we regulate the amount of information, we will only get that information which is appropriate for a positive outcome. So regulation in itself should not be uh, branded as something necessarily bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and but it's not necessarily good either. You know,
Absolutely,
it's yeah, yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
that's
so
what.
you,
Yeah, we were talking on again on collections that you shouldn't post like a machine or production line. Just have one article written or read and reviewed, or two or three per
I
day.
think we
Not
need
not
to
more.
understand how to better deal with the information overload. And every time we think or talk about information overload, we should be thinking filter failure.
So we going to ping people for to say shut up on the net.
Well, no, because that would be inappropriate regulation. They might have something very relevant to say, but if we filter it for relevance and appropriateness, that would be appropriate regulation because we will get the signal through. We are getting to a level where we can use artificial intelligence instead of natural stupidity. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of wisdom in Chinese medicine. It might not be the best, but it is different and complementary to modern medicine. And the Chinese physicians, they, as well as, for example, the Buddhists and the Indians, they have nirvana and achieving a state of pure happiness. Part of that is rebalancing the spirit and rebalancing the intellectual forces in your head. And information overload is actually getting into the way of doing that. So I think that people who are overloaded with information actually can be less happy than people who are balanced with the right amount of appropriate information. So
mm-hmm.
one way of achieving happiness, both for on a personal level and also on a social or a networked level, is to balance the amount of relevant and appropriate information, because uh, we are all scared that we might miss an important bit of information, which is why we go through all the information. That should not be the knee-jerk reaction. We should have a society, a group, a network of people, each of whom um, kind of caters or cares for a specific segment of information. And because we are in a network, we exchange between us the relevant elements, the relevant bits of that, without overloading the network with information, and we should be relying on each other's critical thinking and filtering skills to do that.